Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Mo's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor, Matt Law, and we're here to talk about game week 28 of the Premier League season. I'm continuing to make a little bit of ground in the prediction competition. Still a long way to go, but I'm chipping away at that lead Matt built up. We'll get straight into this game week as it starts tonight on Friday night with a game between Newcastle and Aston Villa. Obviously a big game for Newcastle. They keep getting sucked closer and closer towards the drop zone. Matt, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a big game, isn't it? Like you say, two teams that, a lot to play for, haven't they? Newcastle obviously looking to keep themselves above that bottom three, but Villa, very much pushing, aren't they, for those, I say they're pushing, they are, however they are, they're sitting in a position where it's going to be difficult, obviously, to finish top six, top seven, but they'll certainly feel that they can do that. Still got, 2 games in hand over Liverpool, who are just above them, 3 points behind Liverpool. And if you'd have said that to the Villa start of the season, they'd obviously would have taken it. So the injury to Grealish is not ideal. I mean, I did the preview for this the other day, and it looked like Grealish might be okay, but obviously since then Dean Smith has ruled him out of this one as well, and that's a concern, isn't it? I know it's obviously a problem with his shin around the calf area, one that isn't quite pain free at the moment, which is an issue. Obviously, I'm sure he'll be fine for England moving forward and Villa over the next few weeks. But yeah, just going to this game is it's obviously tough. Villa last time out, goalless draw, wasn't it? With Wolves, lost to Sheffield United before that. Beat Leeds. They are very difficult, aren't they, to predict? Villa. They've got a lot of talent, as we've both said, a lot of good. I think it's even with options now. Looking at who could potentially come into the side for this game. Plenty of options. Obviously, Matty Cash has been declared fit as well, which is a huge boost for them. El Ghazi's back. Obviously, Sanson's played a bit recently. You fancy obviously Ollie Watkins will play. Barkley's been in and out, hasn't he? Barkley potentially come back in for this game, and
Traore's back, I think, is he?
Sorry.
Traore's back from injury.
Yeah, Traore's back as well. Yeah, obviously he was a slight doubt as well, wasn't he? So huge boost for them. But you look at Newcastle on the other hand. 3 best players still. I say three best attacking players. I'd probably put those 3, and Shelvey probably as their best, more influential players. But they're all out, and I'm just really struggling, to be honest. I think with Grealish being out, it did make me slightly shy away from the Villa win. But you look at the Newcastle side, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but potentially a front three of Willock just behind Joelinton and Fraser, and it's difficult, isn't it? It's the step down in quality is huge. The midfield, Hendrick, Hayden, Shelvey. I do like Shelvey. I think he's a good player. Hendrick and Hayden, good players, but not going to really drive you forward. And I'm just struggling with Newcastle at the moment. I think they're in real big trouble, and I think they'll lose this game. I think Villa, freshness, even without Grealish, I think they'll have enough. And yeah, just gone Villa here, 1-0.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same. I was very close to going another 0-0 draw for this one because Villa haven't been scoring many goals lately. What is it, 2 in their last 5? You've got to go back to 27th of January for the last time they scored more than 1 goal in a game. So they have been struggling in front of goal a bit recently, but also they haven't been conceding many. Emiliano Martinez, so he has obviously been a great signing for them this season. He's been really one of the standout goalkeepers in the division this season. Has kept a lot of clean sheets, so they're good at the back. Obviously, still conceding the odd goal, but I think it's 3 in their last 6, so that's a good defensive record. But at the other end is where the problems lie, and we just reeled off quite a few good attacking players that could be coming back into this one or are still in. Obviously, their main attacking player being Jack Grealish is out, as you mentioned, but they've got the players to be scoring more goals than that for sure. And we've mentioned a few times earlier in the season when they were in a bit better form, they just got a lot of good match winners and good attacking players, but they're not really showing it in recent weeks. As you say, their season's been superb so far, and I mean, if you'd offered them 9th place where they currently sit, to be honest, if you'd offered them 40 points at the start of the season, which they're already on, they probably would have taken that even at the end of the season, because they were battling so close to relegation last season. So they've had a great season, and there's always going to be these sorts of spells where they're struggling a little bit for consistency. 1 win in the last 5, struggling a little bit to score goals. But either way you slice it, it's a much better season than it is last season. So they'll be taking that into context. And I do think they'll certainly come into this game as favourites. Just because Newcastle have been so poor recently, and they are sliding towards relegation. 1 point above Fulham now is, it's really starting to worry Newcastle. Obviously, Brighton in there as well. Brighton in a slightly worse position than Newcastle, but I think if you're a Brighton fan, you would have seen more signs to be hopeful of survival than if you're a Newcastle fan. I think Newcastle fans would be a little bit more pessimistic than Brighton fans at the moment. I wouldn't be too surprised if they do go and get a draw for this one, because as I say, Aston Villa's struggles in front of goal. But yeah, like you, I'm just backing Aston Villa to nick this one 1-0. On Saturday, kicking off the action at 12:30 is Leeds versus Chelsea. Leeds, they're struggling a little bit at the moment as well. Four defeats in their last 5 games. They've failed to score in 3 of the last 4, whereas Chelsea just keep on rolling under Thomas Tuchel, still unbeaten. Another 2-0 win over Everton last time out to back up their 1-0 win at Anfield over Liverpool. Their clean sheets keep on coming in. It's been a very, very solid start under Thomas Tuchel, up to 4th in the table now, 2 points clear of 5th place West Ham. How do you see this one going, Matt?
Yeah, really interesting one. Obviously, I did the preview for this one as well, and it's obviously a big game, isn't it? It's a good game that hasn't obviously been played a lot recently, is it at all? Premier League meetings between these two sides. It's obviously a fixture that's been really good down the years, producing really good games, and it should be an interesting game. I think Chelsea's win over Everton was worrying for other sides in around the top 4, just because it was so. Chelsea weren't really under. Everton had a bit of pressure, but it was comfortable for Chelsea. They looked really strong. Kai Havertz played very well, didn't he? He's probably his best game since he's come to the club. He obviously has had his problems since going there, but played in a forward position and was very impressive. And might get another start here, because Abraham looks like he's still carrying a bit of an ankle injury and slightly out of favour. Obviously, Olivier Giroud's future's up in the air, and that is a position that obviously I think they'll need to strengthen this summer, Chelsea. But just their form, Manchester United play West Ham, so that's a good game for Chelsea in terms of, teams taking points off each other. Leicester have wobbled slightly, and Chelsea will be I'd be very surprised if Chelsea didn't finish in the top 4 this season. Just, didn't look like it would happen, did it, under Lampard? But Tuchel's just been... I think Chelsea have obviously got their eyes elsewhere, Atletico Madrid, Champions League, Sheffield United, isn't it? FA Cup, quarterfinal. So it's not like they're fully focusing their efforts on the league. But like I said, injuries good. Thiago Silva's available now. Might not start because Christensen's been very, very good, hasn't he? Obviously, changes you'd expect will happen. The wing backs, he can change both his wing backs. Kante, Kovacic, Jorginho in midfield, he can switch them around, and just loads of options. And you talk about players like, Pulisic, who's not been linked with a move away. Ziyech can't get in the team. Plenty of others in and around. Hudson-Odoi's in and out. Mount in more than out, but got dropped out, didn't he, for the Everton game. So, yeah, Leeds, on the other hand, I think, obviously, it was Bielsa's press conference yesterday, wasn't it? And, good news and bad news on the injury front. Players that came back for the West Ham game, Rodrigo and Calvin Phillips are okay, but Pascal Stewart, who's been good recently, is unavailable. Hernandez is out. Obviously, Forshaw is out as well. But Robin Koch, big player for them, looks like he's going to play for the 23s on Monday, so won't be in this game. But his fitness is a boost for a Leeds side that... It's difficult, isn't it? You look at the Leeds, you mentioned Leeds' form hasn't been good, but 35 points from 27 matches, 11th in the table, won 11 games, same as Arsenal, just one fewer than Liverpool. And when you look at it's obviously the defeats, isn't it? They don't draw a lot, 14 losses, which is more than Fulham, which is, says a lot. But sitting 9 points clear what are the bottom 3 at this stage, so 3 points behind Arsenal in 10th. So they'll certainly be looking probably up the table rather than down. But yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, to know exactly what to expect moving forward for Leeds in terms of this summer's going to be interesting. It'll be a big transfer window, isn't it? They're going to have to try and keep hold of Rafinha, because we mentioned, didn't we, a few weeks ago, even before he was getting linked, I just thought he would just stood out. He looked a real good player, and I think Leeds, like I say, will struggle to keep him. But yeah, big game in this one. Obviously, the last game at Ellen Road between these two sides in the Premier League was back in 2003. So, like I say, he hasn't been played a lot recently. I think there's a League Cup game that happened fairly recently. But yeah, I just think Chelsea will have too much here. I think it'll be tight. As we know, Leeds are a very good side and capable of moving the ball well. But Chelsea looks strong, can make loads of changes. And like I say, I think it'll be tight. But yeah, Chelsea 2-1.
Chelsea 2-1. I've just gone Chelsea 2-0. It's just difficult to back against the clean sheet for Chelsea at the moment. Just looking so solid under Thomas Tuchel. And when you combine that with Leeds failing to score in 3 of the last 4, I've just gone for Chelsea to keep another clean sheet in this one. But as we've said many times with Leeds, they can go toe-to-toe with the best in the league. They haven't really shown it recently. Obviously they've had a really good season. You say that, they're probably one win away from safety. effectively. Which if you'd offered to them that at the start of the season, at this stage of the season, they definitely would have taken it, because survival, obviously, for any newly promoted team, is the number one goal. And Leeds were going into this season probably with more expectations on their shoulders than most newly promoted teams do. Some people are tipping them for a top half finish, which obviously they could still do, very much within striking distance of that, which is perhaps why they haven't got, as much credit for being up in 11th. But it's easy to forget that, almost like Wolves a few seasons ago, they've been pretty impressive at times, which makes it easy to forget they were in the Championship last season. But yeah, only the bottom two losing more games than them this season is just one of those bizarre statistics. So they do either win games or lose games. There's not much in between. They're either great or they're bad. Recently they've been bad. Chelsea have been good, and that's why I'm just leaning towards a Chelsea win in this one. I think that, they've just been so solid. And when you say Chelsea, you'd be surprised if they don't make top four. That's a very big change from what we were saying earlier in the season, wasn't it? When they were down towards mid-table, when we couldn't really rely on them. They just seem like a very reliable team now. Defensively, obviously, those foundations have been built. And as I said many times on this podcast, as soon as they can really get that attack firing, and it's not fully firing yet by any means, then they're going to be a very fierce opposition in the Premier League. But as long as they've got those foundations to build on and keeping clean sheets in pretty much every game at the moment, if you keep clean sheets, you're not going to lose matches. So yeah, I'd certainly back them now to gain a top four finish. And if you're looking at the table now, the form Leicester are in compared to the form Chelsea are in, you'd probably go back them to finish in the top three. So the turnaround under Thomas Tuchel has been superb. And yeah, I'm backing them to get another victory with another clean sheet in that game. Matt's backing a 2-1 win for Chelsea. 3 p.m. on Saturday, there's Crystal Palace versus West Brom. West Brom, we've already mentioned them briefly after that goalless draw with Newcastle, but that we said going into that game, that was pretty much a must-win game for West Brom if they're to stand any chance of surviving. 8 points from safety now. It's still doable, but it's looking very unlikely with 10 games of the season remaining. I think they needed to win that and probably needed to win this game coming up if they were to stand any chance. But the goalless draw against Newcastle was disappointing. They have tightened things up at the back, but they're really struggling for goals. 1 goal in the last 4 games scored, and 1 goal in the last 4 games conceded. Crystal Palace conceded 4 goals in their last game against Tottenham. Obviously, Tottenham ran riot a little bit there, with Harry Kane in particular having a great game. Before that, got back-to-back goalless draws against Fulham and Manchester United. Crystal Palace 34 points. You'd say, 10 games left of their season, couple more wins under their belt, 1 more win, maybe even in a draw, and they're probably as good as safe. So I'd be surprised to see them get dragged in. But these are the sorts of matches they'll be looking at picking up those points, because they've got really difficult end to the season. And this is one of the easiest games left on paper. So, they'll be very keen to get that win under their belt as soon as possible to keep the pressure off towards the end of the season. Having said that, I mean, I'll be surprised if you haven't gone the same as me on this one. I think this one's got 0-0 written all over it. I can't see anything other than that one.
Yeah, I've gone a draw, but yeah, different. I've gone 1-1. Obviously, don't expect it like you to be, particularly open game or entertaining in the sense that lots of there could be lots of incidents, but not particularly lots of goals. But yeah, I think, like you say, West Brom obviously entering, last chance saloon mode, really. It's strange to say that because there is still so much football to play, isn't it? Like I said last week, not like we're 34 games in. We're obviously still loads of football, lots of points to play for. But, West Brom's run, they're coming up. They've got some tough games, haven't they? Chelsea away is their next game. Not going to get much change there, if we're honest. Leicester away as well coming up, and Southampton at home. So teams that... This is the game they're playing against a side, like you say, who I say they haven't got much to play for, but like you say, Palace is still, I think, if they lose this game, Fulham go and win. Obviously, Fulham play City, Man City, don't know if that's tough. Brighton go and win. It's obviously unlikely for all those teams to win, but I do think Palace will be looking over their shoulders. But injury situation, as we know, for Palace is poor. Lots of long-term injuries, but Zaha came back, didn't he, off the bench against Tottenham. So you fancy he'll come back into the side for this one. Be very interesting to see what Roy Hodgson actually does in terms of Zaha, because I think, obviously Eberechi and Townsend have been 2 of their better players recently. So you fancy they might stay there with Zaha moving, more central, perhaps alongside Benteke, who's got a really good header, didn't he, against Tottenham. So on paper, Palace a good side, but it's just strange to know what happened with Palace. They've got loads of players out of contract. Hodgson's future's obviously in doubt. They just need to stay up this season and try and reset, see what's going to happen for next season. Be interested to see what side starts next season for Palace. I think it'll probably be a lot different than this side. But yeah, West Brom, Injury situation is good, which is important for a side down the bottom. He's got options, Hodgson Allardyce, but Snodgrass will probably be on the bench again. Robson Canu and Grant on the bench as well. But I don't think there's going to be many surprises. Yokoslav, Maitland-Niles, Gallagher, Phillips, Diagna, they're all start. Pereira, obviously their best player in a wide position. But yeah, I can understand why you've gone the goalless draw. It's just, it doesn't scream, particularly Premier League classic in this game. They say Palace are tough to beat. I think Palace have drawn their last 2 games at Selhurst Park, and West Brom have drawn 3 of their last 5 in the Premier League. So yeah, draw, isn't it? 1-1.
Yeah, both going for draws in that one. At 5:30 on Saturday, there's Everton versus Burnley. Everton lost against Chelsea last time out, putting an end to 3 consecutive victories and 3 consecutive clean sheets. So that was a big blow to their top 4 hopes, that defeat to Chelsea, but they're still in the race, 4 points off Chelsea now, and Chelsea sitting in 4th. Burnley are winless in their last 5 league games, only 1 win in the last 10 across all competitions. 4 of them have been draws to keep them at arm's length of the relegation zone. 4 points is the difference for them to the bottom 3. So we've got Everton 4 points from the top 4 and Burnley 4 points from the bottom 3. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, another one that's, one of the games that's plenty to play for, isn't there? Obviously, both teams desperate to win for different reasons. I still think Burnley are really, as you mentioned, how close they are. I think they're banging that race. Some good results recently. Draws with Leicester and draws with Arsenal. Slightly fortuitous, weren't they, against Arsenal with that, very odd goal that they scored, a mistake from Xhaka, and then Chris Wood obviously putting it in, but a really good point. But just not, if you're Burnley, you'd rather maybe lose a couple of those and pick up a win, just because you just need that win as points. As we know, Fulham draw plenty, West Brom draw plenty. They just don't really get you anywhere, do they? Same with Brighton. Whereas if you can pick up, 2 wins in 7 or something like that, it fires you really. It would fire them up the table, linger any fears that they have got. But Everton, I mentioned when we we're talking about Chelsea, I just think it was maybe a slightly bit of a reality check for Everton. I thought it'd be a lot better than they were at Chelsea. Formation was interesting. It was more of a back 3, wasn't it, with wing backs. Just didn't really work. Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison didn't really get much change out of Chelsea. And injury situation, they've obviously got a lot of doubts for this game, Everton. They've lost Rodriguez at a key stage. Obviously, Mina's out at the moment. Coleman, slight doubt as well. They're just not their talented players are back. Allen's back, players that they had been missing early this season. But it's just a very, it's an interesting period for Everton now. 3 home games in a row, isn't it? Manchester City in the FA Cup, Palace, Brighton, they play Tottenham. They'll be looking to, if they could beat Burnley and then, beat Palace and draw with Brighton, maybe 7 points from the next 3 league games, it'd leave them in a really strong position, as you say, to challenge for the top 4. I don't expect them to finish top 4 this season, but if they could finish 6th, I think that'd be an excellent season. Even 7th, maybe sneak into Europa League, depending on what happens. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. I just think they'll have a little bit too much for Burnley here. Losing to Chelsea last time out will make them even more desperate to win. And Burnley, just can't trust them to win at the moment. It wouldn't be surprised to me if they did hold Everton to a draw. But yeah, I just think Everton here 2-0.
Yeah, I've gone Everton 2-1. As you say, it wouldn't be surprising to see Burnley grind out a draw, as they did against Leicester, as they did against Arsenal. 2 obviously really impressive results. I mean, that Xhaka mistake, we might talk about it later when we come to Arsenal, but what is he doing there? That's what you learn, at schoolboy level. Don't pass the ball across your goal, especially when there's a player standing right in your way. So yeah, slightly fortuitous, but that's Burnley grind out results. That's what they do, especially against the big teams, and that's exactly what they'll be trying to do at Goodison Park. I think for Everton, this game is pretty huge in terms of their top 4 hopes, because not only bouncing back from the setback against Chelsea, picking up the momentum from those 3 consecutive wins before the Chelsea defeat, but also, yeah, you mentioned those next 3 Premier League games. I think they'll be targeting 9 points out of 9 from those games. If they can beat Burnley, Crystal Palace, and Brighton in succession, they'll be going in as favourites to all of those games, and that'll put them in a really good position going into the home straight. And they've got a fairly difficult end to the season with the likes of Tottenham, Arsenal, Villa, West Ham, Wolves, Man City, all still to play this season. So if they can pick up those 3 wins, get a bit of momentum going into that one, then that will put them in a really good position. So I think we'll learn a lot about their top 4 chances. Like you, I don't really expect them to break into the top 4. I think there are 4 better teams in the league than them, at least this season. But yeah, I think those next 3 games, if they don't take maximum points from them, I think it'll be even more difficult to get those top 4. And if they do take maximum points, they'll have really huge belief that they could do it, and they'll put themselves in a really good position to do so. Yeah, I do expect them to get the first of those wins here. I can just see a grinding 2-1 win. I can see why you've gone 2-0, but Burnley do, although their goal against Arsenal was obviously fortuitous, they have been getting on the score sheet a little bit more often lately. I mean, their scoring record over the course of the season has been pretty poor, but yeah, just backing them to get a goal in this one, 2-1 to Everton, but both backing to Everton victories in that one. 8 p.m. on Saturday is Fulham versus Man City. Fulham coming into it off the back of a famous win at Anfield last time out. I could see the smirk coming across your face at that.
I bet you enjoyed that one, Barney.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that later maybe. But yeah, Fulham, a big win for them. I mean, double headers, well, last season certainly didn't come more difficult than Liverpool and Man City. I think if they went into that and came out with 3 points, they would have been happy. Obviously, Man City's a very difficult task, but Man United beat them recently. Obviously, Man City bounced back then in midweek with a 5-2 victory over Southampton to increase their lead at the top of the table again. So got straight back to winning ways. How do you see this one going? Do you see Fulham give them any chance of pulling off a pretty famous double header against Liverpool and Man City?
It's very tough, isn't it? Obviously, full of confidence, if you say, to go and win at Liverpool, and they're pretty good value, weren't they? I know Liverpool had bits and bobs in the game, but Fulham, I just think they're a really good side now. As we say, the improvements obviously been incredible from the start of the season. I think Anderson at the back, the central defenders, just been, they couldn't defend this early this season, could they? They just, and when they last came up in the Premier League, their defending was always a problem. It was, just horrendous, some of the players that I had back there. But now that back four, sometimes different. It just looks really good for this level of football and good, technicians in midfield. Obviously, they're still, if they are to start this season, they'll need to sign a centre forward this summer. Obviously, Josh Maggio, what happens with him, he's only on loan, but I still think they need, they'll need 2 or 3 attacking players to really, because that is a problem. You can't rely on keeping clean sheets all the time. And if they can be good defensively and add some quality, obviously a lot of that depends whether they are going to be a Premier League club next season, because they won't attract, the calibre of player they want if they are in the Championship. But it's just so tight now, isn't it? Obviously, Newcastle and Brighton have got games in hand, haven't they? 1 game in hand over Fulham, but the gap, as you say, level on points with Brighton. And to put themselves in this position, Fulham is excellent, because it did look for a long stage that they wouldn't be able to, and especially when they lost to Tottenham, they had a goal disallowed in that game, and I thought they would probably feel a little bit sorry for themselves. But quite the opposite against Liverpool, they were excellent. But as you say, it's such a tough game. Southampton, felt the wrath of City after the Manchester derby, didn't they? I thought United were really good in the derby, obviously delighted with the result, but City were not quite at it, were they, in that game? But against Southampton, to put fun, they conceded twice defensively. So, conceded a few recently after they didn't for a long period, City. But, De Bruyne was poor in the Manchester derby, but was excellent against Southampton. And it was a changed team, wasn't it? And that's what's going to happen, I think, for this game, because obviously City, as I say, as a lot of clubs are, they've got next 2 are actually, separate competitions, aren't they? Mönchengladbach Champions League, Everton FA Cup, then they play Leicester. So you fancy there'll be a lot of changes for this game. But I'm just struggling to see where, obviously, Manchester United showed that City can be beaten, and they definitely can, and Fulham deserve a lot of respect. But I'm just really struggling here to it's a small pitch, isn't it, at Craven Cottage? They'll move the ball quickly. Fulham will be resolute. I'm sure they will, but I just think the quality from City will ultimately be too much. And whether Fulham lose this game is far from the end of the world. They play Leeds at home after this, Villa away, Wolves at home. There are games for them. It's not the end of the world if Fulham lose this, and I think they will. I've gone City 2-0 here.
Yeah, again, I've gone exactly the same. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think Fulham's improvement has been huge, and as you say, I mean, certainly towards the start of the season, a lot of people were dooming them after a few games of the season. And even relatively recently, they looked too far away adrift to even certainly to be putting up a fight this good and to be level on points and only now inside the relegation zone on goal difference. But yeah, looking at it, they've only lost 2 of their last 10 Premier League games. One of those was that one against Tottenham, where, but for a very contentious refereeing decision, they probably should have had a draw. Obviously, the problem for them earlier in the season was turning draws into wins, and they've started to do that. 3 wins in the last 6 Premier League games. So in terms of the form book, they've got to be among the favourites now to stay up. The way the form is going, you'd probably back them to finish above both Brighton and Newcastle this season in the end if they can continue that form. As you say, games like this aren't necessarily going to be the difference between them staying in the division, and not many people will expect them to get too much change out of Man City, but not too many people expected that from Anfield, even with the form Liverpool were on. And they have upset the odds quite a few times. And we mentioned that Tottenham game, which they should have drawn. They have drawn against Tottenham already in the reverse fixture this season. They've beaten Everton. They've drawn with West Ham quite recently in that recent run. They drew with Liverpool in the reverse, so that's 4 points from a possible 6 against Liverpool this season. They've beaten Leicester away from home. They've picked up some big results against teams that most people went into those games not expecting them to pick up those results. So they certainly go into this game with belief, but all those teams I've listed off there, Man City are just a level above all of them this season. So obviously this is the most difficult game in the league this season. And Man City, maybe if Fulham came into this off the back of Man City's defeat in the derby, they might have been a little bit more confident that maybe Man City would have been hurt. But then again, we've seen what happens when Man City are hurt like a wounded animal. They came flying back with those 5 goals. And as you say, they have been conceding a few more goals, but is it 6 in their last 4 after so long without conceding? But when you've got that scoring power and you've got the strength and depth they've got, as we've said a few times now, they could field their second 11 and probably finish second in the table. The way things are going this season with their lack of injuries as well, no single injury for them at the moment. Nathan Ake's back now. That's huge for them, and they can afford to rotate and still be a better team than most teams in the league, yet alone Fulham battling against relegation zone. I don't expect Fulham to make it easy. As I mentioned, they've made it very difficult for a lot of teams up there in the top half of the table. But like you, I can see Man City running up 2-0 winners in this one. On Sunday, kicking us off, there's a South Coast derby between Southampton and Brighton. As we just mentioned, Southampton were on the end of that 5-2 Man City defeat. But before that, they did finally end their losing run against Sheffield United with a good 2-0 victory. Brighton, in real trouble. We've just mentioned Fulham there. Brighton only outside the relegation zone, by the skin of their teeth now on goal difference. And that has come as a result of 4 defeats in the last 5 across all competitions, no wins in their last 6, only 3 defeats in the last 3 for Brighton against Crystal Palace, West Brom and Leicester, all by narrow scorelines, all games they probably felt they might have been able to get something out of, which just makes it all the more difficult psychologically if you feel you're doing all the right things but still not getting your just rewards. And that has been, as we've mentioned throughout the season, the story of Brighton's season so far. And, it comes down to it now. The fact is they've got to start getting points on the board, haven't they, Matt?
They have, I thought I backed Brighton to win, didn't I, against Leicester 1-0, and I thought I was onto something. Obviously, Lallana sent them ahead, didn't they? I thought that they could be onto something against the Leicester side with plenty of injuries, but Leicester turned it around. So that late goal from Amati was an absolute killer, wasn't it, for Brighton? Obviously, draws are not fantastic, but a draw would have given them, and left them above Fulham with a point rather than on goal difference, which it is as it stands. That is the case. And I think obviously Fulham, as we've spoken about, play City, Newcastle are Villa, so it's not an easy game. It's not, they'll be hoping that they obviously drop points to teams around them, even Burnley, and you're talking about, we're talking about Southampton here, if you're talking about Palace, not quite safe, Southampton's form, as we know, has been very disappointing. The win over Sheffield United was obviously incredibly important, a huge win, but then, to go into the game with Manchester City off the back of City losing the derby was always going to be difficult. Scoring twice is a positive they can take, but 5 goals conceded, and defensively they just look like they're struggling at the moment, Southampton, and I think they'll have more than enough to stay in the league. I don't think it'll be that comfortable. I mean, to talk about staying in the league now, as we know, we spoke about them as a possible, didn't we, top 6, top 7 side latter stages of last year. Now they've just completely fallen down the league to a side that probably in and around 13th, 14th, maybe they'll be battling Palace, Wolves, Leeds, around that sort of group behind the top 10, which is just not good enough. And it's going to be a tough summer. I think obviously it looks like they're going to lose Danny Ings, and I'm sure a lot of teams will be looking at their better players. But Brighton, as we know, we said all season they play good football, but just struggling to win games at the moment. 5 wins all season, which is just not enough. It's not actually a fixture that's been played a lot. Brighton, Southampton, I think only 7 Premier League meetings, in history between these two sides, and Brighton have never beaten Southampton in the Premier League. Brighton's last win over Southampton was in the Championship back in 2012. So Southampton 2-1 earlier this season at the Amex. So it's a tough game, isn't it? This was the one I struggled with the most, actually, in terms of picking a score throughout this game week, which is, probably a little bit surprising because there's a lot of bigger games on paper in terms of, glamour tires. But I just really struggled here. I think, obviously, as I say, both sides plenty to play for. I think there are goals in both sides, but the defenses can be got at. And maybe I'm not that confident this one, but I'm expecting an open game, and I've actually gone 2-2 here.
2-2, yeah. I'm not confident at all. I've also gone for a draw. I've gone for 1-1.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I went through a Southampton win, a Brighton win.
Yeah, tough.
Brighton's a very difficult one at the moment because they, as we've said, they deserve to win against Crystal Palace. That was a freakish result. Brom was a freakish result. Any other day, any other team, any other season, they probably would have won both of those games, and that puts a completely different spin really on their season. It makes them have a nice little cushion. But those two freakish results, and obviously that late goal against Leicester, Graham Potter will be looking at that run of fixtures thinking they should have got 7 points from those 3 games rather than 0 points. And obviously the natural thing is to think that can't happen time after time and time after time, but it sort of has happened all season. I mean, those two against Palace and West Brom are probably the most extreme examples. And it just so happens they came back to back. But it has been the story of their season that they haven't been putting their chances away. They've been creating chances, playing good football, a lot of possession, but not getting the goals that their chances and football deserve, and therefore not getting the points that their chances and football deserve. And that's why they find themselves. I mean, if they go down this season, they'll be kicking themselves because they've played well enough to stay in this division. I think they've played better than Newcastle. Certainly better than the bottom 3 over the course of the whole season. But as we know, points on the board are the only thing that matters at the end of the day. So they need to start doing that. Yeah, I'm backing them to get 1 here. But I mean, looking ahead, they've got Newcastle at home next, which is a huge, huge game for them. Yeah. They need to pick up probably a victory there. I'll be looking at these 2 games, Southampton, the form they're in, and then Newcastle at home as 2 huge games to give themselves a bit of breathing room, because after that, they then face Man United, Everton and Chelsea, which is 3 of the top 6 in a row, which is obviously a really difficult run of fixtures. For Southampton, yeah, I mean, you make the point they're not entirely safe yet. They're probably a couple of wins from safety, and you'd expect them to get them. Maybe even the next 2, they'll be eyeing them up against Brighton and Burnley at home. But yeah, I mean, their form this year, 13 defeats this season, and 9 of them have come in the last 2 months. It's incredible, their collapse. So this is certainly the best time for Brighton to be playing Southampton. They'll fancy the chance of getting something out of the game. If they can start to stick their chances away, then it wouldn't be too much of a surprise to go and see them win this game. But yeah, like you, I went back and forth on this. I went through every scenario. I wouldn't be surprised to see either team win. But yeah, like you, I've ended up sitting on the fence a little bit with a draw. At 2 p.m. on Sunday, there's Leicester versus Sheffield United. As we just mentioned, Leicester beat Brighton last time out 2-1 with that late goal. Sheffield United lost to Southampton 2-0. Had beaten Aston Villa before that, but yeah, Sheffield United as good as down now, aren't they? 12 points from safety with 10 games remaining. Chris Wilder seems to have given up the ghost, and they're planning for next season now. Whereas Leicester has got plenty left to fight for. That win against Brighton was huge for them after a bit of a slump in form before that. They're still in 3rd place, but still only 5 points above 5th place West Ham. So they've got a huge end to the season coming if they're to hold on to that Champions League place, which obviously they let slip last season when they looked in a really good position. So big game for them. Obviously on paper, this is as kind as fixtures come this season. So how do you see it going, Matt?
Yeah, just looking, Barney. I think it looks like Chris Wilder's it's confirmed he's leaving. I think Sheffield United. I think it's been confirmed.
Oh, really?
Not from the club at this stage, I don't think, but I think the news is pretty much breaking at this second that he's either left or he is leaving today, which obviously is the press conference that was due to happen at Sky Sports News reporting that it's been cancelled before this game. An announcement perhaps coming very soon. So yeah, that's obviously puts a different spin on this game, doesn't it? I was going to say his comments after the last game, in terms of what needs to change for next season. A lot of players coming in and out, but it doesn't look like he's obviously going to be there for that. So yeah, that's a bit of a shock, isn't it, to the system at this stage, which pretty much, I mean, they are down, aren't they? As we know, they're rock bottom of the table, and yeah, coming in 4 games all season, 22 defeats. It's been and you wouldn't have seen this coming, would you? Last season, Chris Wilder leaving after how well they did last season, pushing for before lockdown. And if lockdown hadn't happened, and the whole stoppage, maybe they would have finished, top 7 or some played European football this season. But yeah, obviously, huge news just coming in about him. Obviously, what will happen for the rest of the season is going to be interesting. There's obviously tension, wasn't there, between him and the owner of the football club, which is not ideal. And it'll be interesting. Leicester maybe would have wanted to play, wouldn't they, with Wilder there, because you know what you're going to expect. Now it's going to be difficult to know what to expect for this game. So yeah, talking about Leicester, I just think Leicester not playing Europa League football on Thursday is maybe a blessing in disguise. The fact that they lost because their injury situation, as we know, is very difficult. And if they'd had another game coming into this game, they've still got FA Cup, haven't they? Played Manchester United in a really good fixture. That looks March 21st. But yeah, Leicester, as we know, battling to finish in the top four. They'll be desperate to, obviously desperate, goes without saying, to finish there, but to keep themselves above. Obviously, Manchester United play West Ham, which is good, as I said, for Chelsea and for Leicester, taking points off each other. 1 point behind Manchester United, but only 5 points above West Ham, and West Ham have got a game in hand. So very difficult game for Leicester. I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be a lot tighter. I have gone tight anyway, but I think the news that with Chris Wilder leaving is very interesting and makes this more interesting and perhaps more difficult for Leicester. But I just think Leicester will have enough. The win over Brighton was massive. Injury situation, as we know, is not ideal, but they're coming up against the bottom of the table. And 1-0 Leicester here.
Yeah, I've gone for 2-0. Obviously, that Chris Wilder news does throw a bit of a spanner in the works because, as you say, we won't know what to expect from Sheffield United nor will Leicester, really. Interesting news. I think certainly, even after last season, I think if you said at the start of this season, if Sheffield United were to get relegated, you probably wouldn't expect Chris Wilder to go with that. And, they stuck with him when they've made the worst start in English top flight history. But it must be those disagreements over the transfer market, his comments after the last game, as you mentioned, and his disagreements with the owner, which must have, finally been the straw that broke the camel's back, really, coupled with their form this season. But yeah, surprising whether this comes, that news comes just too soon for, just too late, for the new manager bounce, which we sometimes see. Yeah. And another interesting thing, but you never got the idea that the players had sort of given up playing for Chris Wilder. He seemed to, he kept the standards up in terms of the effort and energy level and everything like that. You didn't see Sheffield United as a team that had necessarily given up, as they showed in that 1-0 win over Aston Villa recently. So I don't think that would be the reason behind it either. It must just be that disagreement with the owner. Huge news for Sheffield United to digest, considering how much he's done for them, taking them all the way up from League One to the Premier League, and such a great season last season. Big news for them, and be interesting to see how they bounce back from that, and how, they've got 10 games of the season now to get a new manager in, start planning for next season in the Championship. That they have no choice really but to have one eye on next season. And Leicester have to really just ignore all that noise and focus on what they can do. We say they won't know really what to expect from Sheffield United, but I think Leicester will go into the game thinking if they do what they do best, then they're going to be good enough to beat Sheffield United, whatever Sheffield United do, whoever comes in as caretaker. Presumably they'll have a caretaker in charge before for this game, because probably not enough time to get a permanent manager in and in the dugout for this game. But yeah, presumably Leicester will just go into this game now thinking, right, we'll do what we can do. We know we're a better team than them. If we do what we do best, then we'll get the 3 points. It's a vital 3 points when you consider they've got Man City next up in the league, and then West Ham. Obviously, West Ham also battling for those top 4 spots in the Premier League this season. So a huge game for them. If they drop any points against the bottom of the league at home, that's a huge blow to their top 4 hopes. So yeah, we're both backing them to win. But yeah, a bit of a bombshell news that Sheffield United have looked like they've got rid of Chris Wilder before that game. So that might disrupt their preparations and Leicester's preparations for that game. The biggest game of the weekend is undoubtedly the North London derby on Sunday, Arsenal versus Tottenham. Arsenal, both teams were victorious in the Europa League in their first legs of the last 16. Arsenal beating Olympiacos with a bit of a late show. Tottenham beating Dynamo Zagreb to continue their really good form lately. 5 wins in a row for Tottenham. They started to get a bit of momentum. The 4-1 win over Crystal Palace, obviously their last league game. I was a bit surprised to learn in the wake of that they had got that 100-goal mark. Obviously Mourinho pointed it out, but 100 goals, only Bayern Munich had got there before them this season. When you consider the criticism they've received of them being a negative team, I think that criticism is warranted at times. They need to push on in certain games when they could push on, and they probably could have scored more than the goals they've scored. And obviously they've played quite a few games, more than a lot of teams, to get to that level. But yeah, I mean, 100 goals, you can't really argue with that. That's the best statistic, that they've scored 100 goals this season, which is a great milestone to reach. And they're starting to find a bit of form. They're definitely putting throwing their hat in the ring late on for that top 4 place. What is it, 5 points to Chelsea now? And this is a huge game. The North London derby is one of the standout games of the football calendar. It's one of the ones I always associate with entertainment, drama, and goals, probably more than any other. I might be wrong here, but off the top of my head, I think it's one of the fixtures with the most goals in Premier League history, alongside, I think, Liverpool. Arsenal is also up there. It's just also always seems to promise goals. There's rarely a bad one, especially in this current era when you've got Harry Kane in such good form, and he loves the London derbies in general, and especially the North London derby. Arsenal starting to find a bit of form, obviously beating Leicester 3-1 quite recently in the league was a big one. The 1-1 draw against Burnley, disappointing, but as we say, without that horrific Granit Xhaka error, that would have been another win for them. So they've started to score a few goals lately. 3 goals against Benfica, 3 against Leicester, 3 against Olympiacos. There's Tottenham scoring a lot of goals lately as well. I can see another good high-scoring game in this one. I've gone out there a little bit. I've gone 3-2 Tottenham to win this one.
Or 3-2, yeah. I've gone completely different here. Yeah, I've gone 1-1. I think it'll be tight, as you say. Usually a lot of goals, but yeah, I just think this will be a tight one, as you mentioned. Both sides coming into it off the back of Europa League games, 2 good results as well. That leaves both of them in excellent positions to reach the next round. I think obviously Tottenham had a bit of a concern, didn't they? Harry Kane came off in the game against Dynamo Zagreb, a bit of ice on his knee, lat stages of the game, but it looks like he will be fine. I'd be very surprised if Kane wasn't in the side for this one. And yeah, as you mentioned, Tottenham, I thought they were out of it a few weeks ago, but they've put a good run together. They're, as you say, sitting in a position where they're 5 points off the top 4 of the game in hand. And as we say, that the race for top 4 is absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Now, I thought even for a few weeks ago that Liverpool would still do enough. I don't know if you still think Liverpool will finish there. I'll ask you, did you think Liverpool will still make top 4? Or
I mean, we need to turn things around, obviously, very quickly. If we are, I would still back us if we can, start getting those wins under our belts. And I think, we'll probably come to that when we do the Wolves-Liverpool game a little bit later in this. But, I can't not back us to get it. But obviously, it's getting more and more difficult by the weekend. We need to turn around that form this week pretty much to stand any chance, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, just looking at how tight it is up there. Tottenham. I'd say Tottenham maybe might have enough, but I do expect obviously City to be there, United to be there, and Chelsea to be there. Not that confident about Leicester, so that only leaves one place. Tottenham, Liverpool, obviously in there. I would give Tottenham and Liverpool more chance than West Ham, Everton. I do think it will be United, City, Chelsea plus Liverpool or Tottenham. To be honest, but very interesting. Yeah, as you say. Arsenal have certainly showed, a lot of improvement recently. Won 3 of the last 4, but as you say, that the draw of Burnley just shows that they've got those moments in them. They still need to improve plenty. Sitting down in 10th in the table, and it's just not good enough, is it? 11 defeats this season is just horrendous, isn't it, for a team of Arsenal? Ilk, talking about what they've done throughout the years in the Premier League, and it's just not even close to being good enough. And next season, I don't think the fans will stomach that. They need to be challenging for top 4, but it's difficult for them to do that. Are they going to spend the money this summer, the positions that they need? And Tottenham have had their number recently, haven't they, in the London derby? Tottenham won the last 2. Arsenal's last win over Tottenham was 2018, so 5 games unbeaten, one of which was in the League Cup for Tottenham. So it has been a fixture that Tottenham have enjoyed recently. And Arsenal, yeah, it's just as you say, it's a huge game for both sides in terms of what they want to do this season. Off the Europa League, they both still have their eyes on that. Tottenham obviously got EFL Cup final and things like that. There's a lot going on for both sides, which is what you want. You don't want to be out of all the competitions, just focusing on the league. Certainly not if you're Arsenal, because they're not really going to. I mean, they're not going to finish. Really, are they going to finish top? Maybe winning around where they are, maybe above Villa. I think that's the top 8 as they are now are all better teams than Arsenal, all better. So, maybe Arsenal finish 9th this season in and around there, which is, as I say, not good enough. But yeah, slightly different to you. I understand where you're coming from, a lot of goals, but just gone a little bit tighter because of the Europa League games. It just makes it a little bit more, maybe the energy taken out slightly. But yeah, 1-1 here.
Yeah, I'm hoping the energy is taken out of the defence and the attack comes out on top in that game.
Yeah.
Just looking at Arsenal's upcoming fixtures, Tottenham, West Ham and Liverpool in the next 3 in the Premier League. I mean, those are tough games, all obviously above them in the table. So a tough run for them coming up. But yeah, I'm backing Arsenal to win. I'm backing Tottenham to win that 3-2. Matt is backing a draw in that one. At 7:15 on Sunday is Manchester United versus West Ham. Another big game towards the top of the table, and you call it a top four battle, which is a credit to West Ham. West Ham obviously in fifth, only 2 points off Chelsea. Chelsea would have played obviously by the time West Ham kick off, so that gap might be different. But they've had obviously a bit more rest than Manchester United because Man United were in Europa League action. They drew 1-1 with AC Milan. AC Milan getting that late equaliser makes it 4 draws in the last 5 games for Manchester United. The exception obviously being that incredible win over Man City when they stopped their Man City's incredible winning run themselves, kept their incredible away record going. Man United, we both backed Man City wins in that just because Man City have been so impressive, but United just seem to have had Man City's number in recent years, particularly at the Etihad Stadium, and they did it again. A huge win for them, obviously. More important for their top 4 hopes than their title hopes, of course, despite them beating the current leaders. But a huge win, which probably not many people would have been expecting them to get. West Ham, big win to bounce back from their own defeat against Man City, against Leeds last time out, to keep the pressure on those top 4. It's a big game for both sides. How do you see it going?
Yeah, it's a massive game, isn't it? As you say, West Ham, I think the win over Leeds was an indication, wasn't it, of their credentials. West Ham, I think they are certainly a side now to be taken, incredibly seriously in that battle for the top 4. 2 huge games, Manchester United away, Arsenal at home, West Ham's next 2. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see. I mean, like I say, I don't think West Ham will finish top 4 this season. I do think they'll make a real good challenge for a Europa League spot. And I think it'd be fantastic if they could bring Europa League football to the London Stadium next season. Obviously, team selection for this game for West Ham is going to be interesting. No Lingard, which is obviously huge for them. They're going to be without him. He can't face his parent club, but who will come into the side for that? He's obviously got options. Ben Rama played, didn't he? You fancy it might be, Bowen coming back into the side. There won't be many surprises elsewhere. Jop and Dawson still central defenders. Obviously, Souček and Rice will play in midfield. You fancy Fornals obviously will play further forward, and Antonio as well. So not too many surprises. And it's a really dangerous game for United. I was very close to backing United here. I just think the Europa League game was, they were fortunate, if we're honest. Manchester United till AC Milan were excellent, especially in the first half. Had a couple of goals disallowed. The handball one was fantastic. United in the end, obviously very close to winning, and then conceded late on. Defensively, recently, as you mentioned, United have been excellent. The performance at Manchester City was really, really good. The perfect away performance, and I just think it's a really tough game, this one. And you look through the years, West Ham at home, and you always think you're going to fancy chances of winning these type of games. But early this season, FA Cup, wasn't it a very tight game? Went all the way to extra time, wasn't it? Scott McTominay scoring. Manchester United last season, this game was 1-1. Early this season, United won 3-1. Slightly had that goal, didn't they, where the ball seemed to bend out of play, and Pogba scored at key time, and then they scored twice late on. So it's a really tough one. A really, really big game, as we say. United sitting second in the league at the moment. Obviously not going to win the league, 14 points behind City, but 6 points above West Ham. If they were to lose this game, and Chelsea and Leicester go and pick up good results, then makes it very tough for United, who are more than in that top race. And I think United, Rashford was a doubt. Martial came off against Milan. Van der Beek's injured. Cavani's a doubt. So you're looking at, obviously, Amad Diallo got his first goal for the club, which was fantastic. And you fancy he'll be on the bench again. But you hope Rashford will be back for this game, because they're struggling elsewhere. If Martial's hip problem proves to be more troublesome, obviously, the amount you mentioned, United miss Pogba is incredible. Pogba gets a lot of criticism. His off the field stuff and things like that. But when Pogba doesn't play for United in these sort of games where they need to get on the ball, it's so noticeable, as well as McTominay and Matic do, and Fred. They're just not creative forces in the middle of the park like Pogba. They miss him. Cavani, can he get himself fit for this game? Obviously, he's had problems recently. As we say, Rashford, Martial. So if United had a full side out, and they were maybe they didn't play Thursday, I'd maybe a little bit more confident. And I did have 1-0 down for you at Manchester United when I started off this one. But yeah, like I say, I just think West Ham are a side to be taken very seriously. They've proved their away performance against Manchester City was excellent, wasn't it? And probably should have got more out of that game, and won 3 of their last 4 in all competitions, West Ham. So, or in the Premier League, I should say. So, a side in good form. David Moyes obviously be desperate to pick up a good result. And I've unfortunately had to sit on the fence here and go 1-1.
1-1. Yeah, I've actually gone West Ham in this one. I just got a feeling for them in my gut when I was doing these predictions. I just got a feeling West Ham could do this one. I think United are just faltering a little bit. Obviously, I mean, that Man City game, as you say, it was a perfect performance from them against the best team. As I said in the build up to that game, the best team in the country and probably the best team in Europe at the moment. To go and do that to them at the Etihad, hugely impressive, deserves huge credit. But while none of us predicted it, it wasn't the biggest surprise to see them do that away from home. I think that at home, their results have improved hugely since the start of the season. But it's just, you'd probably back them. You'd be more confident that they're going to lose a game at home than away from home this season. Just, they haven't lost away from home since January 2020, which is an incredible record, which obviously continued with that Man City win, whereas at home they've lost a lot in that time. And West Ham, as you mentioned, they do deserve a huge amount of respect at the moment. They're not an easy touch for any team. I think they're going into these sorts of games with a lot more belief now. I think you see that from the win over Tottenham Hotspur recently. Obviously, they then went and lost to Man City after that, which is another big game. But I think the win over Tottenham, as we said in the build-up to that game, they would have gone into that game really licking their lips and fancying their chances of beating a team who, for the vast majority of the Premier League era, they have had to look up to and go into games like that as underdogs. Obviously, they'll go into this game as underdogs as well, it being at Old Trafford and Man United being second in the league. But I just think, I've got a feeling for them. I think they've got the players. Obviously, Lingard being out, he has been brilliant for them since arriving at the club. Lingard being out is a blow, but they've then got that depth as well. Jarrod Bowen hasn't had a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. So if he comes back in, they're not losing too much quality there. And I think they've just got enough to bloody the nose of Manchester United. And when you consider there's 6 points in it, a victory for West Ham, that carrot there, moving 3 points within Man United, potentially even moving into the top 4, will be huge for them. David Moyes maybe with a point to prove on his return to Old Trafford as well. Yeah, I've just got a feeling for them. I know you're not happy about it, but
I think it was, I could be wrong. I think 2007 maybe the last time West Ham won at Old Trafford in the Premier League. Around then, I think it's been a long time, maybe even a slightly longer, but it's a fair shout. We'll see what happens.
I'm calling it. Surely it's worth extra points if we get it right, yeah?
No.
All right. Moving on to Monday night, we've got Wolves versus Liverpool. All right, yeah, you can have your fun now talking about Liverpool, because another defeat against Fulham last time out, 6 in a row at home. It's unbelievable, really. It's incredible how that's happened. Obviously, I mean, the game against RB Leipzig in midweek count as a home tie, but we're talking about Anfield, 6 in a row is awful. That win against Leipzig should be huge. I think the amount of the way Liverpool played in that game was really good, and the amount of chances they missed in the first half in particular, you just thought, all right, it's going to be one of those days again. Liverpool can't seem to put the ball in the back of the net. But that spell where they scored 2 chances in a row, it looked like the Liverpool of old, the way they created those chances and finished those chances off. Hopefully now the floodgates will start to open again and Liverpool can start to do that. But there's been a few false dawns so far this season. The back-to-back wins over Tottenham and West Ham, followed by defeat to Brighton, the obviously first leg win over RB Leipzig, followed by defeat to Everton, and the win over Sheffield United, followed by defeats to Chelsea and Fulham. All those wins have come away from Anfield, so they might be pleased to not be at Anfield for this game. But yeah, they continue to make a mockery of all my predictions. I actually predict them to lose in midweek against RB Leipzig 1-0, still go through, but lose their match. But then they were much the better team. Leipzig, I think, were really disappointing in that, but Liverpool were much the better team. And that performance, if they can just replicate that performance, it should give them a lot of confidence. And start putting the ball in the back of the net. I mean, they used to do it for fun, but now they've just seemed short of ideas. I said almost at the start of this one, it was like Space Jam. All their powers are just gone, all that front three and everything. And it's just, it's baffling how bad they've been in recent weeks, how bad the results have been. Sometimes the performances have been good and the results have been bad. Sometimes the performances have been awful. Fulham first half was really poor. I think Diogo Jota coming back into attack is big. He's looked really sharp since he's been back in, and he's exactly what Liverpool needed to give them a breath of fresh air. Fabinho being back in midfield against RB Leipzig was big. So hopefully, him alongside Thiago, Wijnaldum in there as well, can start to form a really good partnership in midfield, because that looked good against RB Leipzig. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to matter what I predict for Liverpool. I always seem to get it wrong at the moment, but I'm hoping I'm praying that win over Leipzig does open the floodgates. And as I said earlier, Liverpool need to return to winning ways sooner rather than later. If they get to challenge for the top four, probably won't matter because we'll probably go and win the Champions League again and qualify that way. But we need to if we're going to finish in the top four, simply put, 7 points adrift now. You need to start picking up wins, as we've seen from Chelsea recently, from Tottenham recently. A good run of fixtures gets you right back in the conversation, but time is running out. 10 games left of Liverpool's season. They need to pick up those wins. They have to do it really here against Wolves. Another defeat here, and those teams above them winning, and maybe you are looking at that top four bit becoming out of reach. But the thing is with Liverpool, they've got the players. We know how good those players are. As soon as they get that confidence back, as soon as they start winning games, they are still, I think, the second best team in the league with those players. And obviously, if the season ends right now, you're saying it's been an awful season, but in reality, it's actually been an awful 2-3 months for them, which has just ruined their season. So if they can get back to that, they were top just before Christmas. If they can get back to that sort of level, which we know they've got, then you'd back them maybe to close that gap and certainly push for the top four. But as I say, that turnaround has to come now, really. And maybe, certainly in hope and hopefully in expectation as well, I've gone for 2-1 Liverpool winning this one.
2-1, yeah. I mean, as you say, it's another big game for Liverpool. I think the Champions League, and as you mentioned, has been sort of a saving grace recently. And I mean, it's not like they're coming up against a second-rate team. It's coming up against a Leipzig team. I think they were second in the Bundesliga, 2 points behind Bayern. They'd been in really good form before that game. Winning. They won their 4 before the first leg against Liverpool, and they won their 4 in between, and then lost again. So it's obviously, Liverpool are not a bad side now. Like you say, what has happened is just, it's incredible, and it is difficult to explain. Like I say, there are lots of different reasons why it's happened. Very difficult to put your finger on exactly why, but I think, as you mentioned, there is time to turn it around, and still, obviously, not going to win the league, but finishing fourth this season for Liverpool would be, and reaching. I mean, you say winning it. I don't think you actually believe that. I'd be surprised if you did. Obviously, semi-finals, Champions League, I think you fall short in that competition. But in terms of finishing, just make top four is the thing for Liverpool now, isn't it? Don't be at the Champions League next season, because that would be, especially when things go back to normality, to be out of the Champions League next season would be dreadful for Liverpool. And yeah, it's a tough game. You mentioned, obviously, I say there is still time, but as you mentioned, if they pick up poor results and then the teams above them go and win, it puts more space in between the teams they're fighting around, and games coming up. Arsenal away after this, Aston Villa at home, Leeds away after that. Games that are so dangerous. Liverpool, there are no easy games in the Premier League. You talk about maybe Sheffield United at home being the easiest game of the season, but United had that a few weeks ago and lost. So you just can't. It's so difficult to predict. As you say, Fulham at home last week is on paper a relatively easy game compared to what you could face in the Premier League, and it's just so difficult to predict. So this is a tough game. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Liverpool go and win it, but I'm just going to draw in the end here. I've gone 0-0. I think Liverpool's problems recently scoring. Obviously, Wolves last time out was 0-0 against Villa. And obviously, Raul Jimenez, the update on him, expects to play again this season. He's been taking part in training, hasn't he? Some non-contact drills, which is obviously fantastic news. You always worry, don't you, with injuries elsewhere. They do tend to heal, but with head injuries, it's obviously a concern for life, not just football. But fantastic to see him making excellent progress, and if they can get him back before the end of the season, last 3-4 games, that'd be huge for them. As we say, Wolves have disappointed this season and not going to finish in around the Europa League positions. They're sitting 12th at the moment, not going to go down, but I do expect them to be in and around, as I say, battling that pack, the pack of Leeds, Palace, Southampton, in note 4, and then I still think Burnley are in trouble. So those bottom 6 and then those middle 4, I think, will be pretty much where they are. And no real pressure for Wolves. There's not that much to fight for, if we're being honest, which may help Liverpool, but it also takes the pressure off Wolves. So it could work both ways. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Liverpool win, but I did back Liverpool to win last week, and they didn't, and can't back them to win again considering their form. So just 0-0 here.
Yeah, I mean, Wolves only 1 defeat in the last 7. There's definitely been an improvement there. And maybe, as you say, that comes with having the pressure off of, not too much left to fight for this season. But yeah, going into this game, I think, victory is far more important for Liverpool than it is for Wolves in terms of their aspirations and what they can still achieve this season. But yeah, Matt is backing a draw in that one. I'm backing a Liverpool victory. Okay, thank you as ever, Matt. We will be back next week for the last round of Premier League games before the March international break. So tune in for that. You can subscribe to this podcast on all the usual channels and on YouTube to make sure you don't miss an episode. And you can find written previews of all of these games and many more over on sportsmail.co.uk. So be sure to check that out. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for joining us.